was already pre-planned as well. So this property there would need to definitely provide for the lateral connections to abutting properties. And then obviously our walking trail system as well. But that definitely will be something that we'll need to look at. Now, whether there's a road extension to the western part, given the drainage area, that's, I don't know enough about that yet, but certainly there's other places within the property where they could connect or provide for connections north and south.
Yeah, we fully understand that. That's something that is really not related to rezoning. It will come up at the concept plan stage when we produce a layout that we want to try to achieve. Obviously, those are things that we understand.
Does anyone on the call have any questions or thoughts about the OSMR for this property, or OSR, or any other comments or observations about the request?
I'm just going to say, given that I didn't realize the challenges in the back with the overhead lines, it is a challenging property for that reason. And it seems reasonable to me that, particularly with so much of it being an easement that they can't really do much with, OSMR, some townhomes might be good. I think the concept plan is going to inform us better.
Okay, anyone else have anything they want to add?
Yeah, who's the developer?
It's a Homestead Land Holding. It's the same people I always work for. The only people I work for.
Okay, Russ, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? We still have about 15 minutes if anybody has anything else to add at this point.
Mark, I'll just ask, do you anticipate a change in protocol as it relates to the physical planning commission meeting in 2 weeks? Is it still going to be virtual, or how are y'all handling the state and the county current situation regarding the?
Yeah, I'm not sure, Russ. I'll have to check on that. I don't know the answer to that at this point.
Okay.
Hey, Russ, this is David Smoke. I think we just got some information that the governor may be extending his executive order to allow us to do virtual meetings a little while longer, especially since the county has still a rule in place through the end of the month to not have more than 10 people meet at a time. So I think if he extends that order, we most likely would have a virtual meeting again. However, if he doesn't, then we'll have to figure out what to do. So hopefully by next week, we'll get some guidance on that.
Okay. Well, obviously at rezoning, since zoning is independent of actual concept or design plan, I'm not so concerned. But we do want to, as usual, move fairly quickly with this once we get it rezoned. And it's just always easier with a concept plan to be able to sit down and face to face and answer all the questions. So maybe by then, in another 30 or 60 days, we'll be in a different situation to where we can do that, or else figure something else out, how to share screens and point stuff out on the map and stuff. So anyway, just an observation, since we had a few minutes left here of trying to figure out how to do what we always do, like we always do it. Thanks, David.
Anybody else have any comments, thoughts?
This is Scott Gibson. The 30 units that is limited to with one entrance, that is a fire marshal regulation. Is that correct?
Well, you'd have to sprinkle the dwelling
Correct.
units. Yeah, if
Correct.
you have more than 30. So yeah, that would be. But in our subdivision regulations, we really require vehicular connectivity unless there's clear grounds for the planning commission to grant a variance from that. So it's very important to us to make sure that we're learning from our past and trying to make the vehicular connections to abutting properties so that people have more ways in and out of a property for a variety of reasons, including the public safety and emergency service providers.
Right.
Well, if no one has any other comments on this one, our next time will be at 9:30. So if anybody needs to take a brief break, we'll start on that.
Okay,
Thank you all.
thanks, Mark and everybody. Hope you are doing well, and I guess we'll get some stuff, information for the planning commission meeting coming up here in a couple of weeks on how to join. And I will talk to y'all later. Thanks.
Thanks, Russ.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Russ.
Mr. Shipley, are you still on the call?
Yes.
It's Dan Johnson. I was listening, so I might have some questions for you at some point. When did he anticipate getting that concept plan to us, to staff?
That's really up to them. It's not required with the rezoning. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'll go back on mute then.
That's all right.
See, we have Nick Myers on board. Hit your unmute button there, Nick.
Nick, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Yeah, Nick, go down to the bottom left of the screen there where it says mute and unmute.
He says it says he just muted. He just unmuted. But we can't hear you. Can he call in, Mark? I don't know how this works. Trevor, can he call in to talk?
He could. I wonder, perchance, if maybe he's not speaking right now.
No, he's
But yeah, you can.
he's giving us sign language.
Yeah, that's the reason I asked for him to do a sound check, because he's never been on here before. Anybody that's never been on here before may possibly have a mic problem. Yeah, we'll be rolling at 9:30, Scott.
Copy that. Thanks.
Looks like Nick disconnected. He might just be trying to reconnect then and see if that fixes it.
Yeah, maybe Ron Pinchuk can give him some advice. He had the same problem when he first went on a few meetings back.
Yeah, I had to go off completely to my settings and play around with the mic. But I don't know what his problem is. Can't tell.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yeah, Nick, you're good.
Yeah, my problem is, and I apologize for that. I have gone from platform to platform to platform every day, and what happens is, I guess the only thing, I'm not a computer guy, but is I almost, when I go from, like, I just came from GoToMeetings.com, and when I switch over to WebEx, I have to turn my computer off and on because it won't let go of the mic. And so that happens a lot. But I just this is the world we live in now, right?
That's good information.
So yeah, so y'all must have got done pretty quick on the first agenda item.
Hello, everybody. It's Noah.
Good morning, Noah.
Hey, Nick. Good morning.
Y'all here?
Everybody's on, I think.
Okay. So who we see at the top, is that who's on the call?
Look to your right and you'll see a whole list. Looks
Okay.
like 18 participants.
Wow. Okay. It's like being on stage.
We got about 2 minutes, guys. We'll get started. Okay, let's go ahead and get started on this item. What this is basically a request to, first of all, if anybody is, please mute yourself unless you need to say something, and then you can unmute yourself so we don't get feedback. This property is just east of South Watt Road, Kingston Pike, east of the Dixie Lee Liquor Store, and just north of the Ice-Arium. The applicants basically wanting to get some very preliminary feedback on a rough concept of actually two 1 acre properties, Waller properties that we're looking to develop into a couple of small shops, retail shop buildings, retail or office. The particular request that you see on the screen, a couple of things that, and we've met with the applicant about this, just to go over some of the staff's thoughts. If the access ends up where they're proposing it, they will have to request a variance from the driveways and other access ways ordinance due to the proposed access not being more than 400 feet from other access points on Kingston Pike. Another discussion item is that, of course, we always pretty much require, unless there's good reason otherwise, for cross connectivity. They are showing a connection to the Dixie Lee Liquor property. That'll have to be coordinated with TDOT's plans. They're doing some work in that general area and coordinated with them. And then to the east, there are some topographic issues, but certainly from a staff's perspective, we would highly recommend that they stub a vehicular connection to that property so that in the future, if that were to develop, that it can be connected. And again, giving people more ways in and out between properties. And then they have a connection down to the Ice-Arium to the south. So that's some discussion points. I mean, the variance is, it may, again, looking at the access point on the Kingston Pike, I don't know if a right in, right out would be a better configuration or something that would be more that people could support a variance on, because if you're going west, the way this is laid out, you could just go to South Watt Road and then you'd have a signalized intersection with which you could go west or north on North Watt Road. So I'm trying to think if there's any other, some of the area around Dixie Lee Liquor is going to be reworked with the TDOT project. There's kind of a drainage swell just to the south of that building that'll be reworked, and the access way is going to be reworked. They're actually going to get rid of the existing curb cut onto South Watt Road there on the north side of the Dixie Lee Liquor building. So that should improve that situation due to, it's so close to that intersection. It's not really an ideal place for an access. I think that's the main discussion items, at least from the staff's perspective. Obviously, we'd want to see sidewalk connections to all the properties to the south and east and west, and they do have a sidewalk that they're showing along Kingston Pike, and that will connect to a sidewalk that will be built as part of the TDOT project there at the intersection. And so with that, I guess, does anybody have any initial thoughts here on this concept? The buildings are obviously up closer to the street. similar to what we see in some of the other developments to the east in the Renaissance area, for example. Yeah, I mean, if anybody has any questions or comments, now's the time to bring them up. I think the applicants just want to get as much input as they can as early as possible, so they know, what they need to be considering when this eventually goes to the planning commission.
Mark, it looks like that access point seems to be across the street from potential access point of the property on the other side. Is that correct, Nick?
Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
And how do we envision that side? I know that this is a tough question for anyone to answer. That is an individual access point for that property that sits behind it. Do we envision that property possibly developing as a whole, or it's all commercial on the other side, correct?
Yes, it is all commercial. You probably know that we own it. And yeah, that's the only access to it. So, part of the development of this side is to plan the best we can to line up across the street. At this point, we don't know what's going to happen. We spent some time with some concepts, but we don't have anything that's set in stone at all across the street. Then we know that is the access point.
Yeah. So, and the access point going back to the icearium, is that actually a potential? I know there's topography, there's drainage on each side, and there looks to be a level area there. Can that really feed back into have another access point there?
Actually, yeah. When Basil developed that originally, he planned for that. If you look at, and I don't know how to upload a aerial, but maybe Mark could. You can see that his parking lot is actually designed for it.
I saw it on KJIS.
Yeah, see it right there. Basil actually has a joint permanent access easement that cuts our property right down the middle. You can kind of see where his is.
Yeah.
His goes straight. It does not line up across. And we've met with him, and he would agree to have our little curve in there so we line up with ours across the street. But yeah, his is. I mean, that's a very, very important important asset to him.
Okay.
That was the original entrance to the Dixie Lee Drive-In anyway, wasn't it, Nick?
You know what? Actually, yes, it's very close. Believe it or not, it's actually a little bit to the east where the original access point is. There's still a bridge that's there. It's kind of hard to see because it's inside the weeds there, inside that little wet weather conveyance. But yeah, it's there. But it was close. You're correct. Appreciate you, Mark.
Well, I'm sorry. How do you feel about Mark has proposed the right in, right out?
Well, we don't like, obviously we don't, that really, really hurts us. It hurts the icearium behind us. All of a sudden you're putting all the traffic would basically come in behind Dixie Liquor, where the TDOT improvements going to take place. We hope soon. So no, we really don't want a right in, right out. We want full access on Kingston Pike. That's going to make sense because that's what we're going to we hope ultimately have across the street.
And I noticed that you don't have a lot of stacking for the right-hand turn. Is there an issue with that building? Is there, how many cars can stack there?
Well, we could increase that. We're just all of a sudden we're eating up our green. You know us. We like a lot of green, and not a lot of
Pavement, I
asphalt.
get it.
So,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
now you think about I mean, you're right. I mean, we do have, but we could increase that by a car. I mean, we could increase it. I don't know if we could increase it too, but I mean, we're just, it's definitely going to take away the aesthetics. But, we understand that everything's kind of a trade-off.
Yeah.
It looks like you're stacking, well, if you're turning right out of there, it don't seem like there'd be that much stacking compared to if you were turning left.
Well, yeah, if you're going to turn left, we got, I mean, all kind of stacking the way we've designed the site. But you're right. I mean, in a perfect world, this is not what you do, but we're, as you all are well aware, we're now down to, whatever's left. And, you gotta sometimes scratch your head of what's the most optimal way to design a site based on the existing constraints.
Well, I think it's a smart move to line it with the property across the street. That's my opinion.
That makes sense. I mean, that's why we did it. It just, makes sense long term.
Nick, have you guys coordinated with Dixie Lee as well to have access to the rear of their parking lot? I don't know if they're going to if they're going to even be able to they're not going to put parking back there, are they?
No, and and that's a very unique situation. But to answer your question directly, absolutely, we have a very good relationship with the Taylors. We have a very good relationship with the Wallers, who own the ground that Dixie Liquor is on. Now, what is very unique is that it's neither the property owner or the tenant that is making the improvement. And Mark, you're going to know a lot more about it than I, and maybe Daryl's on this call and he can explain it. But it is rather unique that the public sector is actually making the improvement on private property. It makes sense. It needs to be done. Again, it's one of those things that nobody would have built it like that today, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any comments or thoughts or feedback you have at this point? This will just be workshopped at, obviously at the May 21st meeting, but again, I just wanted to get some early feedback just to see if it's doable, what they're proposing.
I do have something that I would really like some feedback on, and Mark addressed it a little bit in the introduction. As you can see, we put a dumpster pad on the east end of the Eastern Building parking lot, and we totally support and agree it makes sense to have as much cross connectivity as you possibly can. In this case, we did put the dumpster pad in a location that would, at least for now, restrict cross connectivity. And the reason we chose that location was if you simply just go out to the site and kind of stand where you kind of think that dumpster is going to be, which is pretty easy to do, you can see that to the east of us, the topography probably falls 30 feet. And so, what we're asking for, what we would like to ask Planning Commission for, is that allow us to put the dumpster pad there today, and we will include a note, or however you guys want to do it, to make you feel comfortable that if the property to us, or I should say when it is developed, we will use that as a cross connectivity location, but we think that is a very, very, very long time, simply because it's a 30-foot topography change in a very short short distance. And so we don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, just because it's going to be very expensive to do it.
Nick, it looks like that's a Horn property that's next to it. So
It
to
is.
have cross access would be, I assume you're saying, is a lot of grading to make that
Oh, it's
site work.
Yeah, and just to really get an idea of it, I mean, is just go out there and stand there and look at it, and you go, "Oh my gosh, it's just, as long as other options are available, that's what's going to be done, because it'd be a very, very expensive site to develop right there. Mr. Horn owns a lot of property there. I just don't think he's going to start to develop right there. It wouldn't, but he might. I mean, I don't know, but we would be fine to say that, we would acquiesce to cross connectivity when the time comes. We just hate to do these things where we make this accommodation today when it might never actually happen, or at least it might not happen in my lifetime.
Well, where would you reposition the dumpster if, in fact, that connection happens? I guess that's the
Right. Well,
concern.
okay, so that's a fantastic question. Do you see the crosshatch where there's a easement that goes into the parking lot on the
Yep.
the eastern building? So
Yep.
there's a location so that is a sewer easement. That's the tap. Okay.
Okay.
And there's a spot right there. Now, with that said, I am a advocate. Now, this is my personal opinion, and Noah doesn't necessarily agree with me. We don't always agree, right? We're brothers. I'm sure some of y'all have all probably seen us when we disagree, but I would not. I don't like dumpster pads. The dumpster enclosures are problematic for us. We are content. We have lots of problems with them. They're hard to keep clean. We end up with all kind of stuff that just comes in from the public.
Yep.
And so I'm a advocate of handling the waste in alternative ways than having a traditional, 5-yard dumpster sitting inside a concrete brick enclosure. And I know that goes a little bit against the grain, and I just think in the future, my kids produce a tremendous less amount of waste than what we do. They recycle a lot more, and I think this is a trend that's just going to continue on and on and on. And so I actually don't think that a dumpster pad should be required. I don't think it is required, but I think it's usually the developer's discretion. But but we do have an alternative place. It's not ideal, just like the location we proposed. But if push comes to shove and we had to have it, we do have one. It would probably require us to move a existing sewer line, which obviously we don't want to do.
This is Alderman Pinchuk. I've got a question concerning the Horn property. What about the connectivity between that and the Icarium? Could that be an option? And Mark, could you put up that aerial again? If we had connection between the Horn property and Icarium, does the Does Nick's property still need to be connected?
Just about there.
If we had connection, say that again.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. And certainly that would be an option, I think, to look at with if Horn's property is developed. I think at this point with their project, of course, it's more getting into the design, but basically what I would say with their concept is set it up to where it doesn't preclude a connection from potentially happening at some future date, given whatever may happen to the property to the east. So we'd be looking at access easements that would be platted, to the east and actually to the west with the Dixie Liquor property. And I guess to the south too. So you'd have these cross-access private easements. But I would just say at this point, they just need to make sure they don't preclude that connection from happening. Should all the conditions become favorable and it be a possibility. But certainly the Icarium is another option. I would definitely look at that. But the Horn property, I don't know what the challenges would be connecting south to the Icarium property, but that's certainly something that we could look at as well.
Nick, is the topography better at that point than connecting yours?
Well, yes and no. Probably, Ron. I mean, anything you can do it. I mean, I haven't specifically spent time looking at, the Icarium property connecting to Horns because, we don't control either of those. So, I don't know. I mean, none of them are going to be easy. They're all going to be expensive.
Hey, Nick, I've got an idea. Since this is a workshop, Mark, can you go back to the drawing? As you turn into that in between those two properties, and you start back and you dogleg there to the west a little bit, right there at the corner of the east property, there is a little nook where it turns. Would that not be a better place for a dumpster?
I think that's exactly the place that I think you and I are talking about the exact same spot. I mean, it's really the only available spot to do it. And let me see if I can. I mean,
If I can chime in, the rationale for putting it at the end of the parking lot
that's Noah.
is when the trash truck is emptying the dumpster, he's not blocking a flow of traffic. The alternative location that I think I know Nick is talking about and Ron may be talking about, the only downside to it is that when the trash truck is actually there servicing the dumpster, he's going to be blocking that drive that connects Kingston Pike back to the Cool Sports Icarium.
Okay. I mean, that looks like about the double amount of space of a normal parking lot space.
But there is good space there again, and we're only talking, maybe once or twice a week for 10 minutes. But it does. We've got one at Renaissance that when the truck is backing out, he is blocking traffic, and rarely is there more than one or two cars waiting, but it does happen. So it's not ideal, but quite frankly, it happens in a parking lot too. If somebody's parked over there near the dumpster and the truck's there servicing the dumpster, well, the car can't pull in or pull out, so they just have to wait.
I don't think that'd be a big inconvenience.
Okay. Nick, maybe just trying to move the dumpster back. I mean, in that kind of that diagram that you had sent me a couple of days ago, in that area between that sewer easement and the drive aisle. I'm talking about the north-south drive aisle. Maybe that makes a pretty good spot for it. It's probably more centrally located than where it is now.
Well, you also got to think about access for the garbage truck itself. That's where you have it now. I can envision being more easily navigable for a garbage truck. Some of those garbage trucks are pretty big, but I don't know.
One of the things that we've tried to address that has been a big deal to Basil and the Cool Sports Icarium is visibility from Kings to Pike. And so that was probably one of the other things that we took into account when we drew this concept a couple of months ago, was to keep from inhibiting the visibility from Kings to Pike for Cool Sports, because we do need Basil and Cool Sports to cooperate with us to be able to take their easement and slide it over to the east, which does a couple of things. It helps centralize the location for these two parcels that we have. Instead of having two access points, we would centralize it into one access point. The other thing that it does is it also moves that access point of where the easement is currently, it moves it further away from both the gas station and Dixie Liquors, which gives us more separation than we would otherwise get. I don't know if it's me, but I have lost the exhibit. Is that I'm getting Trevor's photo instead of the exhibit. Am I the only one doing this? It may be Noah's operator error here.
I think that was me. I was trying to upload or send something.
There we go.
Not work. So sorry.
No, we got it. It just popped up.
Okay, there was a
Nick, you had
drawing on
something-
there.
I'm sorry. You had something on the screen that had a little red section off the main drive. Is that where you guys are? I'm not.
Okay, so you were able to see that? See, I couldn't. I thought I sent it up, but I couldn't tell if you could see it or not.
Yeah, we can see it.
Is that what you were proposing?
Yeah. Did you all
See,
see that before it disappeared?
Yeah, I saw it.
Okay.
Can you go back?
See, Nick, see if you can make that. Are you doing that, or is Mark able to do that?
I did that, but I honestly don't know how I did it.
It had a little note that said Nick is sharing content,
Yes.
and it showed a little red right off of the main road. So here's the question, because typically, I don't know when garbage people show up.
Whenever they want, but that's
Yes.
not what they're supposed to do, but yeah.
So here's the issue. You're in the main, a driveway there. Yes, you might disturb some people that park in that parking lot, but you're getting out of the main road when you put it in the corner where you have it placed right now. It looks kind of awkward for a garbage truck to get into that, to unload it and then back around and turn around, and I think you're in a better position where you currently have it.
We do too. No, we
went through. Go ahead, Nick.
No, I was just going to agree that, I mean, obviously before we submit anything or let anybody else look at it, I mean, we go through revision after revision after revision, and we think that where we have proposed it, what you're looking at now, is the best alternative given the constraints that we have.
Yeah. I'm actually fine with this. The easement, cross connection easement will be platted so that we're aware that in the future, if something happens on the Horn property, we can revisit locations. Of course, by then we may have a new way of handling garbage. Who knows? So I'm actually fine with how you guys have it situated right now.
And what we like to think, I mean, Dixie Liquor has their own dumpster in enclosure that they use that's over on the west end. If Horn develops his, maybe we, again, this becomes a private partnership kind of thing where we say, hey, let's build one dumpster enclosure that accommodates a larger area instead of every single site having their own individual dumpster enclosure. And so again, none of that takes place until that property is developed. And obviously we got to deal with trash in the interim. So that's kind of why we proposed it the way we did.
Nick, this is Alderman Pinchot again. I've got the question. I can't, the printing is too small. Are these, what's the square footage of these two buildings, and will they be single tenants?
Well, right now, hey, Ron, the one on the west is 6,400 square feet. The one on the east is 7,000 square feet. You know, it'll be somewhere close to that. As far as the tenants, the tenant makeup goes, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, I had a large tenant yesterday who's an office tenant tell me, you know what? Half my staff is working at home and they're more productive than they've ever been. And I took that as a shot over the bow that, you know, he's going to cut his face in half. So, you know, we just, you know, if there's anything we've learned in the last month is we don't have any idea what the future holds.
All right, thank you for that.
Great point. I guess we're good, aren't we?
Yeah, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your feedback. This was not as hard as I thought it would be trying to do this online and remotely, but I appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to go ahead and go to the next item on the agenda.
Brandon is, I think.
He's in on that. And this item, if you remember a couple months ago, 3 months ago, there was some 5G fiber installation that came through the Planning Commission, not the small cell support structures, but the fiber, mostly underground fiber to support potentially those kind of structures. And there was some areas that were approved. And then the applicant has subsequently wanted to come back and present some additional areas in a generally the same portion of town. It's kind of that North Campbell Station, Sonia, Heron Road portion of the town. And what they're requesting at this time, it's a little bit hard to see on this map, but I'm going to try to use this marker and just highlight kind of the areas that I think there in the red.
About the 10.
So we've got basically the area I'm circling here is North Campbell Station, from basically Sonia south to Kingston Pike, and then down Kingston Pike west in front of the Campbell Station Inn property and just west of that. And then we've got West End Avenue is the second area. And then we have two primarily residential areas. We have Sweetbriar subdivision off of Heron Road. And then we have Stonecrest and part of the Cove at Turkey Creek, off of Sonia, Orrin, and those street Admiral, those streets in that general area. So let me get my eraser out.
Wait. And then you have to pull it up again and hit pen again to close it.
I need to erase it though?
Oh, you can just erase everything if you want.
Yeah.
Okay. Erase all.
Sorry, I'm experimenting with this. But generally that's the three areas that they're looking to expand the fiber installation. As you all probably know, we've there've been some challenges with the installation. There've been some utilities that have been hit, some, cleanup that's been needed in different areas where they've been working in the past. And so some things that the staff is going to comment on dealing with this project. The first thing is we have a limited staff and we don't have the ability to be on site all the time with not just this group, Mount Mostech, but any other utilities, and essentially monitor what they're doing. So one thing that we will be recommending is for this and any future linear projects like this is that they break it up into smaller sections that are more manageable for the staff. And those would be treated separately through individual right-of-way permits. I don't know, I think I got it. Basically, we'd issue a right-of-way permit for one section. We have a pre-construction meeting and then a post-construction meeting, and we make sure that everything is finished. Any issues have been resolved from that particular section before we issue a right-of-way permit for the next section. So it keeps it more organized. We make sure that things don't get dropped or kind of slip through the cracks. And we had a sidewalk on Grigsby Chapel Road that was a few months before it got fixed, and so we want to avoid that in the future. And obviously, we want to make sure that the impact to all property owners is absolute minimum impact. That we have a contact person with the utility, whatever utility it is, that we can communicate with if issues arise, so that then they also can let us know if something is damaged, so that we are aware of it and can make sure that it gets quickly taken care of. So that's a couple of things procedurally that I think that we're looking at just to keep these things more manageable in the future. We will also be requiring for the notifications that will be used to give out to residents or businesses, that actually be presented to the Planning Commission. And this is what we're doing. We would ask that they have a date of when the work is anticipated to start and when it's likely to be over, to be in the notice, so that people can have that expectation, and it's not just kind of out there in the future and all of a sudden somebody shows up in front of their house in the right of way doing some work. It just keeps it more, the more communication that we can have, the better. We don't want any surprises. We will also need, a letter of credit for this new area, the 3 phases that we are recommending. I think, in looking at what they're requesting at this time, it looks to me like it could be broken down into three smaller phases. See if I can get this to work here. But you've got kind of the more non-residential part, which would be the North Campbell Station, small portion of Kingston Pike and West End Avenue. That could be one phase, and which phase they want to work on first is up to the applicant. And then the Heron Road Sweetbriar phase could be maybe another phase, and then the third one would be the Stonecrest, Abril Road, Covey Turkey Creek phase. And that way it's again, more manageable, and we don't have our staff trying to figure out who's doing what where, and it's kind of all over the place. It just keeps it more centralized. And then we can also make sure that in that particular phase, if they've got anything that was damaged or that needs to be fixed or issues, maybe it's not stabilized, smoothed down and stabilized, those kind of things get taken care of before we let them start on the next phase. And this would be for really any utility projects because, you know, these utilities, you know, they're, especially in developed areas, they're, you know, they can sometimes have a significant impact on property owners. So we just want to try to make sure we work with them and minimize that impact to the greatest extent possible. Some other things that we'd be looking at are more coordination with existing utilities, maybe developing a potholing plan for where they're going to be potholing to assess where they may be crossing other utilities. So that again, we're trying to minimize the damage that might occur otherwise. So that's kind of some procedural observations. This particular set of drawings, I didn't include all 62 pages in the PowerPoint. I just basically included this master sheet showing you the general areas that they're looking at. One of the things that I would note, you know, some of these areas have existing overhead utility lines. I guess a question I would have would be, can any of those overhead utility systems be used for this fiber installation? Another thing would be, as you all know, the Campbell Station Inn, the town has spent a lot of time and money on that property, and they are showing a 2-inch conduit through that section one, and then also in front of the outdoor classroom. We just want to make sure that they're that area has particularly close attention, especially the Campbell Station Inn. There's just not a lot of space to work with, and we certainly don't want any damage to that property.
Hello?
And then one other thing would be, there's some language in these plan sheets that talk about tower, type of tower, and tower locations. It just needs to be clear that this is a request for fiber installation only. This project does not mean or imply that we're approving any tower locations. Those will have to be looked at as a separate review and application process. It looked to me like, just on some of the language I saw, there's about 19 small cell tower sites that I counted in different locations in this new area. But again, you know, where they apparently are showing some handholds where potentially, I guess, a tower might be envisioned, that may or may not be where it would need to go to minimize the impact to you know, adjacent property. Certainly, the first thing we would always look at is using overhead utility systems. If that's not available, and you do have to put a new pole out there, you want to try to the placement is very important. You don't want to stick it right in the middle of the front yard of somebody. You want to look at side property lines and try to keep it pretty close to those, put it in the most discreet location possible. And those kind of considerations would be something that we would look at as part of the review of the small cell support structure plan, which is completely separate from this, although they obviously are interrelated. I guess at this point, does anyone have any questions? I have some questions that one of the citizens had sent me, and I can go over those later. But does anybody else on the call have any questions at this point?
Mark, just for clarity, because I see these handhold vaults. do they come in various, I know I've seen on that front page, the symbol page, they have an extra small, a small, and a large, and then they have what's called the handhold vault. Are these vaults all handhold vaults? Are they all varying sizes depending upon? And I'm looking for clarity on what all those vaults are.
I would ask are any representatives from the applicant present on the call? I know we sent the links out.
Oh, good morning. This is Mickey Harless, represent MasTech. The vaults come in various sizes depending on what has to be placed within them for splicing loops and actual splice cases and things where fibers converge together and are spliced together. Everything that would be up into the neighborhoods specifically would be the smallest ones, because it's going to be smaller fiber cables and not any plans to extend out of there in the future. It's only to make the fiber optic cable available at a attachment point if and when a small cell site was approved for that location.
So the handhold, just for clarity, Mickey, this is Louise Pavlin. I'm the vice mayor of the town of Farragut. The handhold vaults are typically located close to where a small cell site would be.
Yes, in theory, that's where we'd want to put them.
Okay. And what size is the smallest vault?
I want to say, I think it's 20 by 30.
And how deep?
It would not go any more than, I'm not totally sure what that exact measurement is, but it's not even got a bottom to it. It's just an access point big enough to put your hand in and a coil. There'd be a coil of fiber optic cable in there. So it's probably not more than 18 inches at the most, maybe even not that much.
So it's 20 inches by 30 inches is what, and it lays flat on it's a plate that's on the ground level?
Yes, it would not be above ground level at all.
Okay. Okay.
This is Mayor Williams. Are those vaults locked?
Yes, they would be locked and bolted down.
What I meant by that, is it keyed to where no one can get in except for a person with a key?
Yes, sir. That would be correct.
Thank you.
Nikki, I'm also going to bring this up because you're well aware you're working in neighborhood residential area. A lot of people consider, or at least they take care of the right of way as if it's part of their property. They put in flower beds, they put in plantings. And of course, we can't tell on the drawings where you're planning to have a handhole may be in the middle of where someone has a really nice bed. And it really does need to be coordinated with the residents so that they understand what's going in, and if there's any opportunity to move it slightly from one area to the next so that you're not disturbing existing planting beds. I know that it's the right of way and you should be able to do whatever you want in the right of way, but this is a residential area, and part of what people do is they take care of that and make it, that care of that is what gives the neighborhood character and a hominess. And so people obviously are very sensitive when you start mucking up their beds. So it's not an easy solution, but then installation in neighborhoods is never going to be easy. So I don't have the answer to that, but I think that the neighbors need to understand that when they have a handhold coming in, what that's going to look like.
Of course. Yeah, our intention is not to damage things of that nature. And if we do have to pass by or near that, we would venture to go underneath it at a significant amount of distance where it wouldn't affect roots and things. It's not, the method of placement is designed to create as little above ground effect, I guess you'd say, as possible. And no, we have no interest in damaging people's flower beds, shrubbery beds, and things of that nature. We're trying to get to if we were going to set something like that, to do it at a property line, to do it at a place that would be less obtrusive. And the last thing we want to do is affect people's yards. I live in a yard myself, so I'm totally on board with that.
And Mickey, this is Mayor Williams. We've had a tremendous amount of concern about damaging trees. There's a big rumor out there that somebody was going to cut down all the trees from your group, and we seriously hope that was very false. But my question is, how deep can you bore in order to hit or miss, preferably, the roots, the large root sections on the large oaks and trees of that nature?
We can bore very deep. A lot of times, if we're on like a highway or a more main thoroughfare, we try not to get too deep, because sometimes we have to get back to a point and access that conduit again, or some future, extension off of it, or something like that, for a customer need or something like that. In these subdivisions, we're trying to have all that squared away based upon some plans we've been given that would show the approximate locations of where the small cells would ultimately go, or would ultimately be applied for with you guys to go. And so there's not really a need to worry about having to go back in there and dig up and access the conduit anymore. If we place the handholds in strategic places, they'll be a one-time thing. If we have to go extra deep along someone's yard because they have some trees over there, we should be able to go as deep as we need to be able to avoid that. We don't want to damage their trees, and we have no intention of. There's nothing in our contract to cut any trees or anything like that. Now, that being said, based on what Mark had just said a while ago, I am going to have us go back and look and see if there's some places where we may be able to convert some of this to overhead placement. However, if you do that, sometimes you have to trim trees to be able to get through there with overhead placement, depending on what you may see there. It wouldn't be roots, of course, it'd be branches, but if we go and look at that, that may be something that would have to be factored in. We have to be able to get through there with the strand and the overhead cable.
That's typically utility tree trimming, like they do for any overhead power lines that may be on the LCUB poles, correct?
Right. It wouldn't be anything more than that. In fact, if they've got it well maintained, there won't be any of that. It just, that's just a what if kind of a possibility thing. There may not be any trimming to have to do.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Below the power anyway. So if they've had to trim theirs, then it's probably clear from there to the ground anyway. So that would be a good thing.
Great. That clears up a lot of stuff. Okay. Thank you.
Fantastic. I might also add, I've been making notes, Mark, on what you said here. This is what I got up so far, and I am going to definitely take this and follow these requests, breaking up probably into 3 sections like you were recommending, doing that part on Campbell Station, Kingston Pike, and West End as one section. We'll do the Sweetbriar Part on another, and Stonecrest and Turkey Creek on another, as far as our permanent or final, I guess, permit applications. And then I will pass the information along about the notifications to the residences. We've been giving them some door hanger type things, when we were going to be getting ready to start working in the neighborhood anyway, but we can crank that up to something a little more personal possibly, and certainly with the dates that we're talking about. Certainly if we're breaking it into smaller sections, that makes it smaller, or makes it easier to have realistic beginning and ending dates. If it's getting too big, then it does tend to make it a little harder to project what the ending date's going to be specifically. Letter of credit will take care of that. We will look and see if we can convert some of this to overhead instead. And I will make sure that we make a note on the prints specifically to say what you were requesting about the tower sites. It's they're putting that on there for their benefit for later, really, assuming that these particular locations are approved and that we move forward with that. All they would do from the handhold to the small cell then would be just a small drop size piece of fiber anyway.
Is there a correlation between where a handhole is shown on the fiber plans and the likely location of a small cell support structure, or is it not particularly connected? I mean, in other words, you can just because you show a handhole coming in a certain spot, let's say it shows up on these fiber plans in the middle of somebody's yard in the right of way. That doesn't necessarily mean that should there be a tower added somewhere that it couldn't be on the side property line. Is that right?
I would say that's true, but I'm not really in that part of it. I don't know. They have, number one, if the tower folks, Tower Source would be doing the design on that, they have to take into consideration different things than I have to do. They're just showing me some potential sites. So we have handholds maybe at a street corner where we're having to go two ways. We'll have handholds. If it's too long of a run, we may drop one in the middle there somewhere to be able to have as a pool. And the rest of them are supposedly where there's an approximate site being shown. They like for us to try to get within 5 feet of where the small cell site would be. But, when you're doing that on preliminary designs, some of those may not show up at the exact same location that they end up wanting them at. But that's why we may be trying to get close to them. If you have something in particular, and I can go back and look, I don't think we want to try to set any of them in the middle of someone's property. It would need to be, somewhere near a property line as close as we could. Well, we can go back and look at those if you've got some.
I mean,
there
were some handholds that did appear to be not anywhere close to the side property line, and so I think that needs to be thought about, because when the actual tower request comes before the planning commission, I mean, we're gonna put them in an area that is the minimum impact on the property owner. Normally, it's going to be to the side of their lot line.
I will take it on as an action item then to investigate those.
Do you think, Mickey, you would be ready? You'll be ready for anything on the 21st with the going back to look at overhead utility options, or?
We'll make sure of it. I don't see any problem with that. We can do that.
We'll need to have your revised information by the end of day next Monday. So just if you can check that quick, because there's a fair number of overhead utilities in these areas. So anywhere those can be used, I think would be preferable for the property owners. That way you're not, disturbing their yards in the right of way.
Sure. I will effort to make sure we get that done and have it to you before next Monday.
Okay.
Mark, I have a quick question. Mickey, you guys had with the first approval, you had a schedule like 6 phases, if I recall correctly. Where do these phases fit into those phases?
Well, the original part, if you're looking at the sketch here, the parts that he circled that have like a blue square, And
Yeah.
I'm a little bit colorblind, so if I say the wrong color, forgive me. But the blue, what this is, the parts that are not included in the blue square, we submitted them initially because that's all we knew. And shortly after we submitted it and got it approved, they came back, MCI came back with some additional possible locations. And I'm like, I wish we could have done this the first time. So this is to try to, we're in the neighborhood. I hate to go back again 6 months from now after you clean everything up and start again. So
Yeah.
I wanted to try to say, let's get this done, get it all done at one time for this area. The other 5 areas were fiber for different purposes. And basically this was our first phase and we're still working on that. We're not even started on any of the others yet.
Okay, so this is going to be added into that first phase then, is what you're saying?
Yes, it would be. So, I mean, it's still going to be permitted separately.
Yes.
Permits that we were talking about, and we'll come up with some specific dates on them too. But some of that, I think our first phase we were talking about doing in January, so we're clearly not we're not on target with that at this point. It's taken a lot longer than we thought, but we haven't gone back and done any of the others. But what I'll do is I will, when I get some dates for these, we'll come up with some estimated dates and I'll resubmit that schedule and we'll add these other parts on so that they would come behind this.
And maybe this is Mayor Williams. One suggestion that I would have that I think that the residents would be very thankful of is whenever you go into the neighborhoods, try to do that to where it's in the grass growing season. If you do it in the middle of the summer, then it's kind of tough to get grass started and going across through somebody's yard in a spot that you potholed or anything else for that matter. So, I mean, this is in areas where you cannot go overhead, okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, that'll be another benefit to the fact that we're already working on this other part. Hopefully by the time we've got the first permit approved from this new part, they'll be just about ready to start that. So it should be something we can go ahead and get this wrapped up and get out of everybody's way.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? I've got a few questions from a resident, but I can get to those in a minute. Does anybody else have any questions? I think the bottom line is we're kind of learning and, with the utilities and what seems to be more manageable for us. I think if we can, going forward, if we can, have these kind of procedures that we've been talking about in place, I think it's going to help a lot, make things more manageable and more organized. I had some questions, just Nikki, again, some of these may not be anything you can answer and probably wouldn't be able to. Do you know if there is a plan, the provider for the total number of antennas?
Yeah, I don't really have that information.
Okay. Do you know if on your plans, where it says like SMC Farragut 45 5G, does the 45, what does that stand for?
That's just a particular number. They're like a tower number. And
Does that mean
cell number.
Potentially going to be 45 small cell structures?
Well, they start with 1, so you kind of read into that. But yeah, I'm not really at liberty to say all that because I'm not involved with that. But yeah, that's and that doesn't mean necessarily that they will end up getting permits for all those. It just may mean where they've done a design and they've had to number each one individually, and they probably won't change the number even if they don't end up building them all.
Yeah, okay. And as far as the tree trimming or pruning, if you get into overhead utility as an option, do you all just basically follow the line clearing policies that you would normally expect out of a normal, like an electric provider?
Oh yeah, we maybe not even as much as that. We don't need to do, like sometimes they will do, if you were a bird on the wire looking down the wire, you can imagine a circle around that wire where they've cut from the front of the pole line to the back of the pole line and so on. We would only be interested in trimming enough just to place our strand and cable at the given location. And that's assuming too that there is a space for us there.
Yeah.
At the correct clearances and separations on the pole. Sometimes we have to get make ready done first, and we've got some places literally where we've been waiting for over a year for AT&T or TDS or somebody to relocate some lines, just lowering them a foot or something so that we can have a space to place on there. But you can't get but so close to the power, and you have to be separated from each communication line by so many feet or by a foot, And of course, your clearances over the road have to be maintained. So sometimes that leads to having to replace a pole with a taller pole or something like that. We're going to take a look at it and see what we got. And
okay. All your vaults are going to be underground, I assume. I mean, that's kind of a implication of a vault.
Yes.
The ones in the residential are going to be the excess that are on the legend. I think it's 17 by 30 by 24. Is that generally what you'd be looking at there? So apparently there's on sheet 81, there's a vault detail that talked about it being up to 76 by 42. That sounded
81. Let me see. I've got that pulled up separately. I'm not looking at you guys right now. I had to go jump into that, but. Oh, you're talking about that little detail thing. Yeah, that's more of a models. I think the small, and I may have spoken incorrectly. It's that's 30 by 24, I think, but it's 30 by 17 is your smallest one, and the depth is 24 inches.
Okay, yeah.
Not 18.
Up on
Yes, I forgot we had this on there. So
pretty much any vaults in residential are going to be the excess on the legend sheet.
Yeah, they'll be the small one, the smallest one.
Okay.
If it's out on Campbell Station or something, there may be something a little bit bigger than that.
Yeah.
What we've got is we got some of them where we actually have to put like a cross connect kind of a thing inside, but that's for a different technology. Doesn't have anything to do with any of this. So.
Okay. I think that's all I have on that. Does anybody else have any questions for Mickey or? Obviously, oh yeah, yes. Mm-hmm.
This is Ed St. Clair.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if they can answer this, but what's the next targeted area for installation in the town?
This is all we've been given up to now. We're a vendor that works for MCI Metro Fiber, and this is all we've been given by them to design up to this time. Don't have any other design work in Farragut at this time that and may not get any more. I don't know, but that's where we stand at this point. This is all we have.
Understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any anything that needs to be clarified? Obviously, Mickey, if you do find that you can use some overhead utility lines, just differentiate those obviously on the plans and where those are, and make it clear on the legend sheet where the overhead utility infrastructure would be used for the fiber versus underground.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we definitely will. I'll get them. As soon as I get off the call, I'll be contacting Scient, who's the company that sent this out, and get them to have someone on the way. They're based out of Mississippi, but they have someone stationed over in Nashville.
Okay.
They don't have anybody over here all the time. We can get somebody over here and get that looked at. They may even be able to know based on their notes from when they were there before. I'm not sure. But they didn't really look at, or they didn't discuss anything that would not be underground, primarily because, keeping it out of sight for the future. But they may have notes on some of that aerial stuff too. But if not, they can send the gentleman over here. He can take a look at it. And we'll
generally on the clearance
whatever I find
on the overhead lines, you have to be at least a foot vertically from other utilities and potentially more for electric. Is that right?
Yes, we would have to be just in a neighborhood situation, because here again, it's when they designed that, they were probably only putting up one telephone cable because they already knew the number of total lots, and then above that would probably be where you have TDS on the bottom, you'd have Comcast or Charter or someone above them. Then from whatever the highest communications cable is to the power has to be at least 40 inches. So they're neutral. So if we didn't have 52 inches, let's say we have 52 or more inches between the top communications cable and the neutral, then there'd be space for us just to place it as is. If it's less than that, then we've got to do something or have either the power company to readjust their stuff or the communications lines to readjust their stuff so that we can have the space to place so that we don't encroach on the 40 inches. And, at certain things, it's less than that, like at the bottom of a transformer, for example. It's hanging below the neutral, so we have 30 inches that we can get below that.
Okay.
Continue to maintain, as long as their transformer is in the right place, and street lights, you have to consider that.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, it's 40 inches below the neutral line, the bottom conductor for the power. We have to stay below that, and we have to stay at least 12 inches above whoever the highest communication line is.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have any questions or input you'd like to provide at this point? All right, well, we'll take a short break, and the next item starts at 11, and we've got some updated images that I'll try to pull up here, and we'll get started on that around 11 o'clock. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started on the last item on the staff developer agenda for today. This is a continuation of some discussion we had at the last staff developer and planning commission meeting dealing with the redevelopment of the old Kroger property and some property that surrounds that area. It looks like we do have him on the call, and I guess Don Kendall's probably here as well. Yesterday I was, yes.
Bud.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Don is not going to be able to be on. I'll be on, and Bob Koch, our architect, will be on if we need him to answer anything.
Okay. That sounds good. Yesterday I received some updated renderings of the project area. I'll just kind of go through these a little bit. This gives you some little bit more context on the larger part of the development and how the larger commercial buildings to the south kind of fit in. We'll just kind of scroll through these first. Let's see here. That's getting back to the south part of the property. This is the larger commercial building. We had an earlier image that was more modern looking. This is their revised building elevation there for that.
Hey,
And
Mark,
this-
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes, sir.
You can spin those 360 degrees with your mouse or if you're using an iPad, you can use your finger.
Okay. I'll do it in a second. I believe I can. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. This is kind of a bird's eye view of the project, at least the portion that they've looked at so far. Obviously, closest to the bottom of the screen is the north part of the property, closer to Kingston Pike. And then, as you we'll just kind of scroll around, and it's a little bit, make everybody sick here. Basically. So right here, we're entering the main street from Kingston Pike. And then, we'll go south into the property, and you can see the larger commercial buildings there before you get to the first multifamily building there at the roundabout. And so that was one of the things that we asked them to do, is try to see how the project fits there with that intersection between, or the transect between, the commercial and the residential. The smaller footprint commercial closer to Kingston Pike, and then the larger commercial as you work your way south, ultimately to the multifamily portion. Let me see if I've got. We'll just look at some of these elevations again. This is again, we received this yesterday, so I really haven't had a chance to, give it a lot of thought. But that's generally the larger grocery store building. Somebody needs to, yeah. And here's some of the smaller buildings that we looked at more or less last month. Those are pretty much largely unchanged. And then again, the bird's eye view showing how it all fits together. Does anybody have any question? I think they're still working on getting the concept plan. I know that was something we talked about at the planning commission meeting, to see how the development of the property is going to fit together. Obviously, that's very important. They completed the flood study a couple of weeks ago. And so I think they're trying to work through, what portions of the property is realistically developable and how that's going to fit in the overall concept of what they're doing.
Mark, this is Alderman Pinchot. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
All right, could you put the bird's eye view up, please?
Yeah. Let's see. Okay.
In the middle of that complex, there's some storefronts that looks like it's going to face out towards Kingston Pike. I really like the looks of that. Just wondering if the northern part of this development is going to have any storefronts facing out to Kingston Pike. I mean, that really draws the attention of the people passing by, and I'd like to see more of that in the northern end. Is there any plans, or have been any discussion about that?
Yeah.
Want me to answer that, Mark?
Yeah, go ahead, but that's fine.
Yeah, this is Bud Cullum. Yes, absolutely, there are, and a couple of kind of 2 or 3 smaller boxes that will be both fronting Kingston Pike and fronting as you turn in. This bird's eye view right here does not show. We have not rendered yet the 2 or 3 buildings we're planning right as you come in off Kingston Pike. As we finish, I'm getting a little bit of a feedback there. Can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yes. Good, bud. Good.
But yes, to answer your question, one other thing I might point out, Mark, that may be helpful is on some of those other angled shots, as you go in there, then use your mouse you can just click on the left and start spinning it. And as you go in, that's going to give them, it's almost going to feel like you're walking the streets or driving the streets down there. And but to answer your question, we have not rendered yet in this model the 2 or 3 buildings right out on Kingston Pike, but that will be coming as soon as we finalize this concept master plan that we're working on furiously right now.
Well, this is Bob. Do you know whether the schematic plan, the colored, what I would call bubble diagram plan, was conveyed to Mr. Shipley?
No, it has not. It has not.
Okay.
Bob, it has not. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it has not been conveyed yet because we still have some discussion and some work to do on it. So I want to make sure, obviously, we're going to show it to them and it's going to change several times, but I wanted to make sure that we're getting it accurate. So that has not been conveyed to them yet.
Fair enough. I just wanted to make sure because it would help represent this question.
Yeah, that's something that just came out, so everyone will know that was just kind of a hand sketch that came out just in the last day or so, and we've got to. We're going to get it to you as soon as possible, but we don't want to give you something that we know is not going to be accurate. So what you're looking at right now, we have every reason to believe is going to be 99% of the way that area that you're looking at is in fact going to lay out. So that's where, Mark, if you go back to a couple of those other angles, especially like down at the larger commercial building where you were, you can spin around, that'll give, and then go to some of those others and spin it 360 degrees. That'll give everyone on the phone a little more context. So that angle right there would be looking toward, go back a little to your left there, Mark. So that right there, obviously, that tree's not going to exist. That's going to be as you approach Brooklawn. And coming in off of the Brooklawn entrance, you would be coming down then right in front of this commercial building. And then spinning on around the other way, you can see how it looks, Mark, as you drive right further in. Go spin one more time. There you go.
That's the east-west drive that bisects Main Street.
Okay, bud, that's coming off Brooklawn, headed east.
That is correct.
Correct. So then, Mark, if you want to go down to the area from the angle at the roundabout.
This is that same intersection of Main Street and the road from Brookline. And
go to, let's see, I'm trying to figure out which, there's another view if you get there, that view. So that's again, that's almost at the roundabout looking back toward Brooklawn. So if you spin to the left, you'll see.
You're actually at that cross section. The roundabout is further to the south.
Yeah, the roundabout, right. You should be looking down, there you go, toward the roundabout.
That's correct.
But this is Alderman Pinchuk again. Those sidewalks down the main road there, are they going to be that wide or wider so that we can possibly have restaurants or coffee shops have tables and chairs out there?
Yes, our main goal would be that the main street coming off of Kingston Pike all the way down would have the widest sidewalks if possible. As you're looking at that coming from the bottom of the screen all the way toward the roundabout. Not that the other sidewalks won't be wide also, but that's yes, that's our goal, to get them as wide as possible for outdoor seating.
Great, appreciate that.
Yeah. I might point out that we've gone through 2 or 3 iterations with the larger tenant that you were just looking at. They have not totally signed off on this rendering because we just really produced this just in the last several hours. But we have reason to believe, based on where we've been back and forth, that we're very, very close. There may be some tweaks that they will request, but we think we're very, very close on the general look of that building.
Mark, this is John Green. These are great drawings and very informative. Will this information be at the next Planning Commission meeting for discussion?
Yeah. I mean, I would plan for it to be, unless Bud has, I mean, there may be some additional information as well. It just depends on what they would have ready to share, I suppose.
Our goal would be able to have this, all of this, plus some. We're frantically trying to get to the point where we're comfortable showing an overall master plan with park and amenities and multifamily and the whole thing by that meeting, if possible. Hopefully we can get that to you before that meeting and have, at least so it can be circulated. But everything you're looking at on this screen right now, subject to some potential minor tweaks from the large commercial user, would be what we would plan on having at the commission meeting. Mark, if you can spin that particular one around so you're looking back toward Kingston Pike. That I think that's going to give Bob, I don't know if you can zoom those or not, but that gives a pretty good perspective that you've got a long linear, what we're wanting to call Main Street. And the only thing, as I said earlier, we have not rendered yet is the actual opening onto Kingston Pike.
Would that include, Bud, the iconic building elements that we talked about with the Planning Commission at Kingston Pike?
We got to come up with something for your review and comment on that.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts or feedback on what you're seeing with this these updated images?
Bud, Mayor Williams, nothing on the back portion of the property yet? On the south end?
We're very close. We're very close. That's what I was kind of referring to earlier on the overall master plan. We have a hand-drawn new rendering based on a lot of comments internally that we went through at the end of last week. That hand drawing just came out yesterday. And that's where when I was talking to our architect, that I wanted to have a little bit more time. It may just be a couple days for us to review and make some potential changes before we submit it to you, because I want to make sure what we submit is as accurate as I can get it. But that's my goal, is to have something from the concept plan for you people to start sinking your teeth into just in a matter of days, to the point, hopefully it could be something that could be introduced at the workshop for the commission meeting also.
Thank you, sir. This looks really good.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any thoughts you want to share?
Mark, this is Vice Mayor Pavlin. I think it looks great. I'm looking forward to seeing the concept plan so we can get a better lay of the land with the connectivity. Of course, that's going to be the big concern is getting in and off the property and eventually what that leads to for traffic impact and all that stuff. So we need to be able to see a concept plan. So I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, anyone else have anything that comes to mind with what you see so far? Okay, well, thank you, Bud, for sending over these revisions, and we'll take whatever else you provide, and we can show that to the Planning Commission on the 21st. I'm not sure if it'll be in this format or in person. We'll have to see where we're at that point. But anyway, we'll show whatever you're ready for us to look at and give you feedback on.
Sounds great, Mark. Appreciate it, and commissioners, everyone that's on this, I appreciate it.
Thank you all. I guess that concludes our staff developer meeting for today. And if anybody has any questions or comments on any of these items we've talked about, you can email me or call me, whatever. We can talk about them further. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mark. Everyone be safe.